Welcome back. You're watching NewsX. My name is Vineet, and NewsX has been informed from its sources in the idiot that on radar are a few companies which have allegedly received funds from USAID and George Soros-led Soros Economic Development Fund. As per sources, 4 companies are under investigation: Assur Social Impact Advisors, Rootbridge Services Private Limited, Rootbridge Academy Limited based out of Bengaluru, and Council on Energy, Environment and Water, a think tank based out of Delhi, is also under the radar. The 3 companies of Bengaluru have allegedly received rupees 25 crores from Soros Economic Development Fund between the year 2021 and 2024. And as per ED sources, Foreign Exchange Management Act has been violated in these cases. And according to sources, the Delhi-based Council on Energy, Environment and Water is under probe for working with Asar, who received rupees 8 crore US aid funding, and this was received in the year 2023. The investigation is, however, still in the initial stages, is what we are learning. And here's what Mr. Jaishankar had warned us about George Soros.
If I could only stop at old, rich and opinionated, I would put it away. But he is old, rich, opinionated and dangerous. Because what happens is when such people and such views.
And this is what Donald Trump revealed when he spoke about the USAID funding that went to India.
Well, why are we giving $21 million to India? They got a lot of money. They're one of the highest taxing countries in the world in terms of us. We can hardly get in there because their tariffs are so high. I have a lot of respect for India. I have a lot of respect for the Prime Minister. He just left, as you know, 2 days ago. But we're giving $21 million for voter turnout. It's voter turnout in India. What about, voter turnout here? Oh, we've done that, I guess. We did 500 million, didn't we? It's called the lockboxes.
All right, let's talk about this with our panelists now. Sumit Peer, senior political commentator, is here with us. Mr. Pathakrit Pine, foreign affairs expert, also joins us on the show. Mr. N.K. Sood, former RAW officer, also joins us on the program. And last but by no means the least, Professor Madhav Nalapat, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, is also with us on the program. Professor Nalapat, old, rich but dangerous is how Mr. Jaishankar described George Soros, and that's exactly the ambit with which the ED has also approached a number of these organizations who have received funding from USAID and the organization which is run by George Soros. What is your assessment of these raids? And something like this has always been a possibility because there are enemies of the state, sir, that have always worked and operated in the shadows.
Look, I'd like to point out, Vineet, what makes George Soros and his funding particularly dangerous, and unfortunately USAID also, is the very heavy penetration by the Communist Party of China inside the Soros organization and USAID. And as a consequence, what we are seeing is basically funding for projects that are active against governments in countries that are regarded as standing tall and standing up to China. India, for example, Prime Minister Modi is a prime example of that. So this is the point. The point is, I can understand being old, being rich and opinionated. I guess everybody has opinions. Everybody grows old and some people become rich. But the reality is that Soros is using that money in a very specific way. And I think those of us who have studied that functioning of the Soros organization are quite aware for quite some time of the communist Chinese linkages. And that is what makes it particularly dangerous, because you have independent-minded governments. You have governments standing up to China, and you have got dictatorships basically kowtowing to China. So what happens is that so-called promotion of democracy is basically promotion of street violence against governments that are standing tall. I mean, frankly, we are no stranger to that. In and around the national capital, we have seen violence, and I'm sure that there is a very interesting source of funding for that violence. So my point is, Vineet, what makes George Soros particularly dangerous is the obvious China link. Now, he's had that link for quite some years, about even when it was fashionable to have the link. He began that link when it was fashionable. That was much more than about 3 decades ago, and has retained it even now, when it's clearly not only unfashionable, but frankly, the Chinese are identified by the United States security systems as the #1 threat to the United States. And as far as India is concerned, we've been watchful for quite some time. We have been having reinforcements on the border. We have taken a very strong stand in any incursion. We took a very strong stand on Galwan, and air, sea, space, including a virtual space, land. In all these frontiers, the challenging the challenging environment has been created by challenges thrown at the 2 biggest democracies, US and India, by the Communist Party of China. So this is what makes Soros dangerous, Vinny.
Right, absolutely. Sumit Peer, obviously, there seems to be an angle here which is pretty profoundly dangerous. All this money coming in, what do you think it's being used for? I mean, is it a garb of sorts, or do you think there is a deeper, sinister plot? Because we all know what George Soros feels about India, what he feels about the current dispensation as well.
Look, Vineet, thank you very much for having me on your show, and a beautiful question as always. Look, Vineet, it is not about one man. I call him the pawn of the deep state. Deep state has a lot of pawns like George Soros. We know one, we are talking about one, we are discussing one. And this one is a bigger pawn. It's like a JCB which dismantles things, but there's a driver who runs the JCB. The driver is deep state, and all the enemies of India who are wanting this BJP government to go, Prime Minister Modi to get out of the picture at any cost. Let's not be naive about it. This money coming into India is a testimony to the fact which we have been saying on NewsX for years. There is money being siphoned sent into India through various NGOs, through think tanks, through furji invoicing, through these consultancies, through all kinds of things, wherein the money comes and it is used to give to all these activities and all those nefarious characters who use it to break India. Like Tukde gang, or so many of them who exist in India. Award Wapsi gang, Mombatti gang, Dunia Bhar ki gang hai yahan pe. Right, and these all people get money for anti-India activities, and these are the kind of people who use it. Today we know of one Soros. Today we know of one money coming in. Vineet, when there was Delhi riots, the money was sent. Shaheen Bagh ki biryani kudrati nahi thi na sir. Paisa aa raha tha na uska bhi. So when you look at any of all troubles fermenting in India, the money is sent. And what we know by these 3, 4, 5 companies is not even the tip of iceberg. When we start going into the NGOs, when we start going into these think tanks, I know, for example, there are some elite think tanks in India and in Delhi most probably, and the people who head them, they're the most nefarious characters. I don't want to name them because anybody can do a Google and find who these are. Most nefarious characters head them, and they are think tank. And these are the people who try to ferment opinions, who try to put in opinions. Look, when you start getting into it, the communal violence in India, if it happens, do you think it happens just by if kuch bhi ho gaya, a cycle wala has a takkar with a rickshaw wala and there's a big riot? It doesn't happen like that. Always we have seen there have been people, there have been organizations who have been there putting money, who have been putting energy to cause all this ruckus. Not only that, let me take you 3-4 months back when BJP did a press conference and they clearly alleged that George Soros has relations with the Congress Parivar. BJP alleged that George Soros has relations with whom? Sonia Gandhi ji. And this is what the BJP is alleged in a press conference. When you look at this complete nexus, these NGOs, these corporates, these things, then links with Congress Parivar, links with Mrs. Gandhi, then Rajiv Gandhi Foundation, I don't know, God knows what all. It's a much bigger thing which is going to reveal, and eventually we'll find there has been tons of money which has been put into this India to destabilize India, to weaken the India, and to disturb peace and harmony. That is the agenda of this man, and that is the agenda of his masters who are somewhere in the world and who wants to cause enough ruckus here. We are only scratching the surface, sir. It is not all. When we get more into it, and I know for sure last 3-4 weeks ED has taken a task that have started doing a crackdown and identifying all those people who got the money. Remember Modi ji ne kaha tha, जिसने देश का चुराया सबको लौटाना पड़ेगा, सबका हिसाब होगा. I think it's a part of that thing where you have to be taken to the task, and 25 crores, 30 crores, 80 crores, 50 crores. When you look at this money, This is a lot of money to at least cause ruckus and to spoil the name of the country. Well, nothing, merry goes round. Unless and until money makes the merry go round. No money, nothing works. This is the logic what we should understand. And Trump was not crazy to cut USAID because as per Trump himself, trillions of dollars since the last few decades have been used by USAID to run their nefarious agendas of deep state in various countries of the world, and India is not an exception. India has been at the receiving end. We're just scratching beneath, chote mote cheeze, and once we go deep into it, we'll find this nexus, and it is onus of India to dismantle this, and all the people who have to be associated with them. It's not a foreign exchange violation and all. This money was sent for disrupting India, for communal violence, for disrupting the pace and the growth story of India. These all people, in my opinion, personal opinion, should be tried under UAPA, besides FEMA and all other, whatever violations they have done. Because the intention of the money was not to give you an extra, extra few $1,000s, or you wanted to evade the income tax authorities. No. Money was sent to disrupt India, to disrupt Bharat, and to bring the story of Bharat to an end. That is what the real purpose of the money was, and we should not be naive to think that this is only a FEMA violation and all. And this network is big, Vineet. Donald Trump might have weakened the deep state, but deep state is still up, running and functional. It's a long battle to go, and we have to work together with hands and gloves, with each other, with all the like-minded people, and dismantle these groups and these people. And last point, nothing happens without political patronage. Political patronage nahi hai, nothing will happen. Let's find who are the people who have been giving them khad pani all these years, who have been protecting them, who have been protecting their interests, their secrets, and their whereabouts.
All right, Pathikrit, this is a topic that we have picked up in the past as well. George Soros and his nefarious outlook towards India. Is it slipping through the cracks when you hear of such funding being exposed?
Vineet, I think we are missing the wood for the trees, and that's as simple as that. Number one, this organization, as Sumit Bhai rightly mentioned, has been working with USAID, which is part of USAID, has been working with USAID, which is part of the State Department. That means unless we believe that the State Department of US works for China, then otherwise we must accept that there is a part of United States itself which works against India. So let's not bring China in every angle. There is a part of America also, for all that bonhomie about democracy. They also don't want us to rise. Secondly, we are missing the wood for the trees for one reason. Foreign exchange, the violation under FEMA does not make, grants, charities, and donations by George Soros illegal. If you go to the court will say, what is the illegality? The problem is, I have highest respect for the External Affairs Minister, and what he mentioned is so very right. The stand taken by Government of India, I support it. We have been fighting against anarchy. There has been efforts made in the last 10 years to dismantle the government, BJP government. These are all true, and the government has valiantly fought against it with a lot of patience. But the reality is this: have you banned investments, funding, donations by George Soros into Indian organizations? You haven't banned it. Now, when you don't ban it, have you banned donations by USAID? You haven't done that. Now, if you don't do that, they will keep on funding. What happened to that portal called Scroll and the allegations of Chinese funding or funding coming from United States by an organized person who has interest in China? Those guys most of them have got bail. The problem is this: you do not have a legislation in place where you say clearly that Indian organizations, Indian universities, Indian think tanks cannot accept donations from NGOs abroad which have connection with state departments of other countries. You haven't done that. So what are we beating around the bush that George Soros is a bad man? If we don't do the right thing in terms of banning it, they will do it. We can have thousands of debates and we can discuss the same thing. Ultimately, the issue in the front of the court is this: have you, sir, made investments, donations, grants by George Soros illegal in India? The answer is a clear-cut capital letter NO right now, as of yet. So you can have large number of intelligence inputs, says that they work for CIA, USAID. If you do not take that action, everything else is just, just beating around the bush. Yes, FEMA violation is itself an act of crime. When it comes to foreign money coming and then it is being misused or misappropriated. That does not necessarily mean funding by George Soros as illegal. You are using the FEMA route because you haven't have a legislation in place which makes funding by USAID or FEMA, George Soros illegal in India. Please understand the legality part of it. And that is why I strongly support Vinit when you said that they're slipping through the loopholes that we have in our legislations, because first of all, we do not have a legislation in place. My last point, I strongly support the stand taken by Prime Minister Modi that about urban naxals. But the urban naxals are being created in the universities of India. Have we taken a stand about what is being taught in the sociology, history, and political science classes? Do you have a checks and balances in terms of what is being funded, what kind of collaborations they have with foreign think tanks, what is being propagated as a narrative? We have no control on that. So unless you control that, unless you say cessationist activities within universities will lead to cancellation of recognition, unless you say Indian organizations cannot take funds from any organization abroad which has a State Department connection, everything else then is futile, Vinit, because we have been discussing it for the last 2 years. We do not have a legislation in place as of yet. I am a strong supporter of the government. I hope in future it will come. As of yet, technically in front of the court, it is just a FEMA violation. You cannot convict them for taking money from George Soros as of yet because it is not illegal. Back to you.
All right. Mr. Sood, Pathikrit also has hit the nail on the head that, there is obviously a loophole when it comes to all this money coming in. How is this supposed to be regulated once it's been clearly and vividly identified that this is perhaps money that can be used against the interest of the state?
I think our agencies will be doing the rightful job. But I must tell you certain things, As being in law, CIA was involved in a lot of things within India. They had been killing our scientists. They had been killing our prime ministers. They had been trying to disturb India. A lot of things are there. But we later learned about Ford Foundation. That Ford Foundation was part of India, arm of the CIA. Then George Soros came. Now deep state has come. You take the case of Manipur. In Manipur, both China was involved, deep state was involved, George Soros was involved. Deep state was providing, or George Soros was providing money, China was providing firearms. Even, you must have seen that Rahul Gandhi was repeatedly asking PM Modi, go to Manipur, and there was a plan that Manipur, if PM Modi goes to Manipur, he would have been eliminated. We have seen the case of Bangladesh, how the government was removed from there. It was said the US did it. Then came the deep state within US did it. Deep state was part of the government at that time. Now this deep state was blatantly involved in India in all the things, You take the farmer strike, you take this strikes in Delhi or anywhere else, riots are created all over the places, So now it has come that USAID was involved, USAID was funding all these things. So I think USAID was also part of the deep state. But I think the government has tried to do something, and especially when Donald Trump says that he will give the details of all the people, all the funds that were distributed by USAID to Indian leaders and Indian politicians. That will solve a lot of problems in India. But let us see how the government behaves, how the opposition behaves.
All right. We've run out of time. We'll take concluding comments from all our panelists. Professor Nalapat, starting with you, sir.
Vinit, I simply want to say that Pathikrit is perfectly right. So far the State Department is concerned, it has been honeycombed by CCP for quite some time. And Mr. Sood raised a very pertinent point of nuclear scientists. I think we can both be very proud of the fact that the Sunday Guardian, on the front page, paper which pointed out long back that Indian nuclear scientists have been dying in unexplained circumstances in large numbers. As soon as that report came out, Vinit, immediately the deaths of scientists stopped. The front page report of Sunday Guardian, it will be there on the record. So, very frankly, they were opposed to a nuclear deal. They didn't want India to have nuclear capability. or to improve that capability, they destroyed all the cryogenic program, set it back by about 10, 15 years. So this kind of activity has been going on, and unfortunately they have infiltrated they had infiltrated several departments in the government. Fortunately, PM Modi is going after all that in a very thorough way. So I think let's hope that he succeeds, and let's hope Donald Trump succeeds. But it's absolutely a fact that elements of the US government are linked to the deep state. Secondly, Vineet, a very important point. When we are talking about fomenting communal violence, when we are talking about people being killed, people dying, we are talking something very serious. We are talking mass murder. And very frankly, it's not just a foreign exchange violation, it's basically a crime against humanity, apart from being a crime against the state. And I've studied communal rights in India for several decades. And I can tell you that there may have been some occasional spark or something. It will quickly died out like it does in so many parts of India. But if it is kept going through funding, I mean, you saw, for example, this biryani which was being referred to in our discussion. I mean, if it is kept through massive funding, then that spark becomes a flame, and then becomes a fire, and then consumes the vital interests of the country. There is no doubt, Vinny, that government needs to be very watchful and prevent such fires from spreading and catch those sparks before they burst into flames. Vinny.
All right, well, in fact, let me also go up to the big screen and show you what exactly this case is all about and what has been the response by Asar to NewsX. Well, they clearly say that they want to state unequivocally that Assur has not received any foreign direct investment from any entity. So obviously this is a complete denial of what allegedly is being proposed here by the ADR. Indian directors hold 100% of the share capital, so there is obviously no chance of outside funding pouring in to the companies. What they say, we operate like any consulting organization through service contracts, and that's exactly what they get paid for. So there is no room for any outside funding being operative here. And of course, they also in fact go on to say that we remain fully compliant with all legal requirements, including FEMA, which is of course related to the foreign exchange that comes to India and the money that is in fact given to entities in India. We have been contracted to provide our services by CEEW on a USAID project, and that's perhaps the explanation for those funds. And Clean Air Better Health aim to support National Clean Air Program is also something that Assur claims that they worked for, and integrity has always been at the core of Assur's work. And obviously this is an explanation that has been given by this particular company. We continue to collaborate with diverse stakeholders. That means USAID is not the only one, and the George Soros Foundation is also not the only one, and we are cooperating transparently with the authorities, providing all necessary information that they require. So obviously there is an utmost amount of collaboration here to figure out what's what, and we remain committed to upholding all legal and regulatory obligations as well. So this is a statement which has been put out by Assur, and the CEEW has no link to George Soros or the Open Society Foundations, and this exactly is the name which has gotten them in a bit of a turbulent space or a pickle with the Enforcement Directorate. And the EEW has never had any association or received any funding from George Soros or the Open Society Foundations, is what the clarification is all about as well. Assur Social Impact Advisors was contracted by CEEW to provide specific services for a USAID project related to clean or cleaner air, and that's exactly what this money was for. And this project has already ended. CEEW has no current relationship to Assur at this stage. So it is a project which has concluded. It is a thing of the past, and they have not received any queries from any government authorities related to Assur so far, is the clarification that has been given to NewsX as well. And this has been the response to NewsX. We have no reason nor have any basis on which to comment on any ongoing investigation concerning a third party. So this is the clarification which has come about, and they continue to say that they remain dedicated to its mission of conducting independent, rigorous research to support India's sustainable development. The big message coming there, and obviously they also go on to say that we are aligned with development priorities outlined by governments in India at different levels. So obviously an elaborate clarification there, and they also say that we will continue to support evidence-based policy making and implementation in this spirit is perhaps one of the concluding remarks of this response that has been sent to NewsX. They also wish to emphasize that all our work is conducted transparently, and that's exactly why they have been in this particular pickle, in full compliance with relevant regulations and alignment with our core mission to serve the public interest. So this is the clarification which has been given by Asar. We have run out of time, but appreciate all the guests who joined us and spoke about this update. We'll take a short break now. Be right back.